Hello.
Hola, Victoria. How are you doing?
Fine. Sorry for the delay.
No, it's okay. Perfect. Okay, so I will start admitting the people that will be joining us. Sometimes it take a little bit of time, but yeah. Oh, oh sorry. I think since I had the YouTube thing on, we heard it double, but okay. Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining us in today's webinar. We're giving just 1 or 2 extra minutes to see if there are more people joining us. But yeah, feel free to prepare your questions. We have here Murilo, Maria Victoria, and Mateo. So yeah, thank you for joining us on time. Okay, so I think we can get started. So now again, welcome everyone to joining to our monthly webinar series. Today, as you may know, we are going to be diving into a topic that probably is on top of your minds, that is breaking into AI research. So as the field continues to grow at an incredible pace, a clear path to becoming a researcher can be a little bit overwhelming. So the work for getting into research is challenging, but there are many opportunities that we can get and to be part of this field. So we believe that the best research come from different perspective, and that's why we are especially excited to host a panel today with 3 inspiring individuals who have navigated this path successfully and that have different backgrounds. So that's super useful and that's great for us to know. They will be sharing their experiences and insights on how to build a career in AI research, what skills are essential, and how to find a place in this field that is very dynamic and that changes constantly, especially with the break of ChatGPT some years ago. So that being said, I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists today. Each of them, as I said, brings a unique perspective and their stories and expertises. So I'm happy to introduce Murilo. He's from Georgia Tech, Maria Victoria from the University of Genoa, and Mateo Espinosa from the University of Cambridge. Um, so yeah, I'm really happy to have you here, guys. They are all from Latin America. Murilo is from Brazil, Maria Victoria is from Argentina, and Mateo is from Ecuador. So it's really great to see you here. To get started, I would like to let you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your experiences and journeys in the AI research, and why are you passionate about in this field.
Okay, I guess I can go first. So, hi everybody, my name is Murilo. Like Anna said, I am Latino. I'm from Brazil. I've been living in the US for 12 years now, and I worked as a learning engineer, and I also do research at Georgia Tech. I'm also finishing my master's in computer science, and happy to be here speaking with you guys today.
I can go next, then I can take this. Hey everyone, my name is Mateo. As Anna said, I'm originally from Ecuador. I currently am living in the UK, so I've been here for almost 5 years, which is crazy. Finishing my PhD in the University of Cambridge, so I am just submitting my thesis, so pretty much done with it, which is a big new stuff. And then before that, I was in the US working for a while, and I did my undergrad in the US. So I lived in the US for a bit more than 7 years. Yeah. So very, very happy to be here. I'm interested in all sorts of research, and my research, just to give a bit of sense for anyone that's want to know a bit more detail, my research is mostly on human AI interaction, particularly of how to provide feedback to models once they've been trained. So yeah, happy to be here.
Okay. My name is Victoria. I am from Argentina and obtained my law degree from the University of Buenos Aires. In 2021, I started to conduct research about social impacts and implication of AI for the Laboratory of Innovation and Artificial Intelligence of the University of Buenos Aires. And since then, I have been conducting research in AI, and in 2023, I started my PhD in Genova, Italy. So I am living in Italy right now. And my PhD program is called Security, Risk, and Vulnerability. So it is a multidisciplinary program that brings together people from engineer, political science, and law in my case. And also at the same time, I am studying an undergraduate in AI engineer virtually in a university of Argentina also. And I am interested, my thesis project is about causality and large language models. But I am interested in other topics, for example, AI safety, and that's all.
Oh, well, you'll have amazing profiles. And about that, is there a project that you're particularly interested? I know that Victoria, you work in safety, Mateo with human interaction. So there's any particular project that you would like us to know about?
I can get started, so we rotate one position each. That way we don't always have the same order. Yeah, I think for me, I just obviously I did, and we'll probably talk about this later on too. But I did my PhD in a bit of a weird transition phase, right, where things sort of shifted from pretty much a bit of vision and language to entirely language mostly today, mostly language-based stuff. So I've been mostly working on the vision side of things and slightly more language recently. But I'm mostly interested in transition mostly to the language side of things now, and I'm particularly interested in the, as mentioned, the feedback side of things. And when you interact with things, humans are really fallible entities, so they make a lot of mistakes, and they're sometimes very arrogant about it. So I'm interested in how to still make use of feedback even when these experts or these humans are interacting make mistakes. So I mentioned that aspect of the uncertainty and the competence of humans being taken into account when they interact with a model. So that's one of the things I'm exploring in the last few days.
About a project I am working is about AI debate, which is a technique of scalable oversight, a technique in AI safety. Scalable oversight is the problem of supervising AI system that may outperform humans on most skill relevance at hand. And we are working in this paper with my research group in Argentina, which is called Frontier Artificial Intelligence Research. It's a group at the University of Buenos Aires also. And we are working to finish a paper and to submit the paper in a NeurIPS workshop. So I am excited about this project for two main reasons. The first reason is that I think that this direction of research has huge potential. So it will be the first opportunity to obtain feedback about this idea and this direction. And second, because I think that is the most challenging project we have so far. So I am excited to see how the research group progress in recent months, and I think that we can achieve a very impressive result.
Cool. And for me, most of my research has been in computer vision for fine-grained visual categorization problems. So that basically means like classifying different plant species images, which there is a lot of plant species that are very visually equally appearing, or classifying bird calls in audio, which I know it doesn't sound like a vision problem, but when you convert audio into spectrograms, it becomes vision, mostly in biodiversity conservation domain, so either plants or animals. But I also dabbed a little bit into the NLP space, like training different models and fine-tuning them and seeing how scalable they are based on the size of the data. But it has been mostly on computer vision for biodiversity conservation.
Wow, that's amazing. I would like to work in that field someday. So, I think we have another one talking. Okay. Anyways, okay. So thank you. That's a really interesting field that you have been doing and research. It's amazing. So now we can go with the main topic of our webinar, that is breaking into AI research. So as I mentioned earlier, this field have exploded, and we saw a news some weeks ago that they are comparing either the research salaries with professional athletes, for example, with that call from Meta. That was crazy. So I think this is a really exciting path, but this excitement isn't always reflected in Latin America. So with that in mind, I would like to ask you all, sometimes you can struggle finding a starting point and you don't know how to start. So looking back in your own journey, how did you manage to set this starting point where you felt that you were confident enough to begin this path, or that you started being interested in research, and so on? Maybe some of them have a more straight way rather than others, but yeah, I would like to ask you about it. Maybe Mateo, since you had the longest path.
All right, cool. I'll go first. All right, I guess it's a bit of a tricky question. I think first of all, and by the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this, but research is just not for everyone. In terms that it is sometimes extremely frustrating and it can be quite a grueling process sometimes. So if you don't enjoy it, it can be quite a bit of torture. So it's not for everyone. So it's very good to get yourself exposed to it before you jump into something very serious in research. The best way to do it, if you have the opportunity and privilege and resources, is to obviously going to be some sort of university degree, right? Like some sort of class in the university. This could be later point in an undergraduate level. When I was in my case, mine was I had a chance to take a graduate level class when I was in my undergrad, where it was just reading papers, and I was forced to do a research project, and that sort of got me exposed to a lot of the things that were going on at that point, which in AI changes every time. So but it's still a lot of transferable skills. But if that's not an option, which I am very much aware that is a very high privilege here, if that's not an option, then there's luckily today a lot of opportunities, both physical and virtual, where you can get exposed to a bit of these things. So there's a lot of tutorials online. There's a lot of blog posts online that you can get yourself into. And there's more recently, it's been a sort of something getting very popular. I took part of one of these, for example, a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of summer schools online, which are usually free, where you get a lot of actually quite amazing speakers being able to tell you about the state of the art in the particular field. So those are good ways to get started with knowing what's active out there, which is the first thing you need to know. And also, if you do enough of this, you'll find directions you feel like a bit more interesting for you. That being said, then the sort of a point in between these two things, where between the virtual sort of, say, free summer school tutorials and university degrees would be some sort of workshops in conferences, which, by the way, can also be attended virtually. So if you don't have the opportunity to travel to the conferences, there's ways to achieve this in a virtual environment. And LXIAD does affinity workshops every year in at least 3 or 4 conferences. So those are great opportunities to meet other people, to see what's going on, and to get exposed. So yeah. The thing is, it's good to get a bit of a sense of how the field is moving before jumping to a specific direction. Because sometimes, and a lot of times actually, the fields that you think are the best, because they're the best, sort of the most hot topics, are also the hardest to get into just because of the competition and the difficulty. Most of them require a lot of resources and so on, which are not always easy to obtain. So it's good to get a bit of an exposure before jumping into research, I would say.
Yeah, and about that, I would like to maybe go with you, Murilo, since you lead a research group. How do you feel that you relate with what Mateo said? And also, how do you feel that your students have been able to, get a little bit of exposure on this research field?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for context, I co-lead an applied machine learning research group at Georgia Tech. We are a completely student-run organization, and we've been doing research kind of on our own for the past 4 years now. And the group has actually grown from just a few students to now it's more than 40 students, which is quite nice. And now we're even getting support from the university, and then maybe even becoming a class. So maybe in the future, for the spring semester, I'll become a TA, and we'll have like an introduction to research type of class where people can do research with us and try to publish papers. So I have two two things that I think really helps when you're trying to get started. I think research can be very individualistic and it's really easy to get lost especially if you are like just getting started and don't know what to do, because then you can do anything. So having a well-defined task and problem that you want to solve, it's really helpful. And also having people that want to do that with you. So there's like an accountability part of it. So trying to do that in a group. I think one of the best ways to get started is participating in machine learning competitions on Kaggle. And some of those competitions, they are like research focused competitions that are hosted by big conferences like CVPR or NeurIPS. Like some of the workshops, they host their own competitions on Kaggle. And it's a very beginner friendly way of getting started doing research. You participate in the competition, and then at the end, you have the opportunity to write this working note paper that you go through the entire review process and try to publish at the conference if that's something that you're interested about doing. But I think participating in those types of competitions is really just a good way, because basically they take care of the task that you're trying to solve, and the data set, they provide everything to you. There's a lot of guardrails. So the only thing you have to worry about is the methodology and like what are you trying to do to solve the problem. So yeah, like trying to find people that to work with so you can keep each other accountable, and finding a venue that provides those types of very structured ways of trying to do research. I think that's really, really helpful when you get started.
That's amazing. And I think this also relates with Victoria, since you also lead a research groups in Argentina. And your path is a little bit different because you started from law and then you started to include AI. So it would be also great to hear about your perspective about this.
Yeah, I don't know if I have so much to add to the answers. But in my case, it's difficult for me to identify a clear starting point because I think it was many things that coming together gradually. But if I have to give advice to someone, I could say that try to ask yourself question, identify the question that you are really excited about, and trying to answer the question or construct the answer to these questions, and try to obtain feedback about your progress, your intuitions, and try to identify the most influential voices in this field. And also, I think that a useful advice could be starting to write. Like I often told my like the people who is collaborating with me in my research group that stop reading and try to starting to write, because it sometimes helps to organize your idea and clarify your ideas, and also creates a record and makes you reasoning in a transparent way, allowing others to audit your work and also provide feedback. So.
Yeah, that's great. And also, talking about, the bright side of getting started, you sometimes get with a lot of motivation to this field, but sometimes this field, and I think most of the times, is not a straight line, and you could have like some moments that you doubt is if research is what you would like to do. And as Mateo said, it can be a little bit frustrating to, start a research project and then don't see it like coming to light. So is there a moment that you would like to share with us that you struggle, with the research, or that you doubted that this was the path that you would like to follow? Maybe, yeah, whatever, whoever would like to give us.
I'm happy to take this one. I've mentioned it's research can be frustrating. I think very few people, unless you start doing it, understand how many things don't work before something works, right? And that's, I think the majority of our time is trying things that just don't work. And that can get extremely frustrating because you never can get actual deadlines, or you can never actually aim for a deadline very accurately because you never know when things are going to be working by that point, right? Once things work, it's much easier to understand. So I think it could be quite a demanding field. In my case, I think you get that sort of uncertainty all the time. That's a part of doing research, especially in your PhD. Part of it is just being a bit always uncertain, and you just have to be okay with a bit of risk. And that's part. But in my case, some sort of setback or some sort of change of directions. When I finished my undergrad, my plan was always to do a PhD, but decided to take a little break because I wanted to make sure that I was entirely 100% certain that I was going to want to do a PhD. Because someone else gave me similar advice that it's not for everyone. And I now I can see that at that point it didn't make sense, but now I can definitely see it. And I enjoyed it. I really love my PhD, but I took my time to make sure that I wanted to do it. So I took a break of almost 4 years where and again, this was against the advice of a lot of my, especially my mentors, the teachers at that point. And I don't think I wouldn't recommend it always to do it. Everyone do this, but for me, it really worked. I think it was a matter like at that point, after the time, I was able to make sure that I was comfortable with this, and I knew what I wanted to do. I had a bit more maturity. So I think it helped a lot. But I think it's good to take the little breathers if you think is the right thing. I don't think doing a PhD for sake of doing a PhD is ever a good reason to do it. So just because it feels like the natural step doesn't have to be the natural step, and it's okay to take a break. So my point would be it's like there's not a straight line as Dana said. It's okay to sort of deviate a tiny bit. Make sure you sort of sort out your preferences and then come back to it if ever, because now you feel more comfortable about it.
And about talking what you're saying, and since you're a PhD student, as Victoria is as well, how was your path, looking for this research topic, or how did you find the problem that you feel that it was important enough to dedicate years, or perhaps how did you find the professor that you would like to work with? Because I think this is a huge step, particularly in the PhD side, not necessarily in industry, but how did you manage to find these questions that you were really intrigued to solve for the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 years?
To be honest, I didn't think too much about this. In my case, my PhD lasts only 3 years, so it's less time. But actually, my research topic is causality and large language models, as I said before. And actually, it was the first topic I conducted research in the field of AI in 2021 when I didn't know anything about AI, but I found blog post in MIT Technology Review, and I was very passionate about this. So I followed the topic for 2 or 3 years until I finished my law degree, and then when I have to present a thesis project for my PhD, I present this topic. So I would say, like, try to find a topic that you are really passionate about, because you have to dedicate like 4 to 5 years to this topic. And also you ask about the professor. It was also a thing that I didn't think too much, but I would say take the risk in these cases, even if you are not entirely sure.
Mateo, do you feel the same way, or how was your story compared to Victoria's?
Yeah, similar. There's a lot of really nonsensical jumps in this process, which in hindsight you're always wondering like, why the hell did you do that? I think that's part of it. So I think we can give it no advice, and you'll probably still make those same changes, and then later on wonder why you did them. But I think the sort of general story for most of us is you have some sort of general area that you're interested in. And this general area can come from something that, as we all talked before, like you come through some sort of events, some competitions, some workshops, and sort of thing. You have a general area that sort of attracted you. And then to actually funnel down into your decision, I think it's quite important to read, like actually get yourself exposed to it, and reading is a good idea. Now, there is such thing as reading too much. That is a bad thing, and I think Victoria mentioned this too. This is not a good thing to just overread too much of an area, because then you're never going to do anything. But it gives you a sense of what's going on actively in space, and it gives you a sense of what are some of the things that you could do. And you whenever you're wondering whether someone else has tried this, the best way to make sure that no one else has tried this is to read something that just came out and try to see how you can extend it. Because like the likelihood is no one has tried that because it just came out, right? So it's a good way to find directions. And then after that is the idea of finding a supervisor, which you could find based on the paper that you've read, what are the groups that work in that area, and you can start reaching out to people. So that would be those steps. So everyone has this very general big area that they're working in, and this very niche specific area within that big area where only a handful of people are interested in it, and that's the thing that you're going to be focusing on. So find that general area, which usually is your supervisor, and then try to find that general direction by reading and by looking at the latest things in that subfield. But yeah, and that being said, by the way, in PhDs you can change things relatively flexibly once you're in there in terms of the specific niche. The thing that is much harder to change is the general area. So that's the one thing you want to make sure that is correct, that you got it right. But the niche is fine. Yeah, you can pivot.
Perfect. That sounds good. And I'm curious about asking Murilo, since you are not a PhD student yourself, but you have been a young researcher that is interested in inspiring, other young researchers to get into this field. So what motivated you to do this, and what are the challenges that you think that students are facing when getting exposed to the research field? And if you agree with what Mateo and Victoria just said.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely agree with what Matteo and Victoria said. I think that, well, this is a problem that they know very well. Professors have very limited time and resources. And what we found, at least here at Georgia Tech, especially probably not only in the US, but probably around the entire planet, the amount of people that are getting interested in research just keeps increasing, especially in AI. So at Georgia Tech, there's a lot of students that they want to do research, but they don't know how to get started. So the way how at least our group started was basically to fill up that gap, like provide a way for students that are interested to do research but don't really know how to get started, a structured way of doing so. So yeah, that's how we came about doing that. And it's been very fulfilling. Like it's been a very fulfilling experience by doing so. Right now, I think the group has about 45 people or so. We're running like an interest group this semester, and we attracted more than 100 people. So it keeps on growing. We keep seeing the interest just increasing from that. But it's also very hard to try to do something that is interesting for everybody and to teach them like this way of how to think about doing research and go by doing so. But yeah, it's been very meaningful and yeah, just a really cool experience.
Okay, thank you for your insights. And now that we have talked a little bit about how you start in the field, probably how you evolve in this field, we would like to talk, a bit the field itself. So I would like to ask Mateo, since you're a final year PhD student, and probably you have seen a lot of changes in how this field have been growing. Yeah, basically how the AI research has changed since you start your degree, and now with the LLMs, and it's basically impossible to catch up on all the papers that are being published every day, every year. So yeah, how have you seen that the field have changed? And also yeah, if you have faced yourself some transitions in how to do research or how to upgrade the process, if yeah.
Yeah, of course. All right. So I guess the one thing that is I guess worth mentioning is that AI has always had fads, right? It's always been something that's been hot and very, very hot at some point. So when I started, it was some transitioning from graph neural networks, so GNNs, to like diffusion models. Like diffusion models were the big thing back then. And then that eventually transitioned to LLM. So LLM is just the most recent fad. Just to make, like, in terms of the research, that's always been the case, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Something else will come later on that will change things. The slight difference here is that this new fad did had a bit of an impact on how papers are written and how papers are produced, more importantly. So this means that people can start using LLMs to write much faster, to write much more accurately, and to just produce more. So what did increase and what that changed a lot is the sheer number of like papers being produced. Now, this may be a sort of contentious opinion, but I think the sheer amount of good papers is probably still constant. It's just there's been more papers being produced, which makes it a bit more difficult to navigate to the landscape when you're trying to find stuff. And it also means that publishing has gotten much more competitive because there's more people submitting. Reviews are worse because there's not enough reviewers per paper, or at least good reviewers per paper. So it does make this process much noisier, much more competitive, and much more difficult to navigate. So those two things are sort of practical challenges. In terms of the research side of things, LLMs are just a new model, just like any other model that came before. And what happens is when something new comes in, you try to use it for your research, you try to extend it, and that has happened to me, and it has happened to everyone. So I think that's quite common. I don't think that's a new thing, particularly for my period. But the last part, the sort of increasing production and competitiveness, it is a bit of a change. Now, that being said, there's a bit of solutions for all this. I still I'm a strong advocate of trying to submit papers not just to play to the noise, meaning that you should submit things that you're surprised that don't get in, rather than surprised that they get in. So you yourself should be very comfortable with your work before you're submitting, and that already will put you way past most papers that are submitted. So that will put you already quite high in the bar. In terms of navigating the space, there's a lot of production, but still conferences do have a slight filter. So look at the papers that were accepted by specific conferences, look at the top papers. And in this space, things like Twitter could actually help getting you exposed to things that are sort of tracking attention so you can look into them. Yeah, so it's changed. It's changing the way it's being done, but I don't think it's a particularly different change than anyone else that has been in this field. It's a fast-moving field in general. There is a lot of noise, but you can also use this to your advantage, right? It means that there's more work you can make. If you're good, you're better at others at finding the new things. Meaning you're better at filtering these papers and not reading entirely every paper to detail, but reading the ones that matter. You can actually also take this to advantage and produce yourself more, right? So it's a double-edged sword, but it's an interesting pace transition, definitely.
And about this, what you're saying, and I would love to hear the perspective of all of you. Do you think this pressure to publish quickly is affecting the rigor of your work, or probably the quality of the papers that are getting, published every day? And you think it's worth to fall into this pressure on publishing? I have heard before that there are even high school students that are interested in publishing just because they think it will help from the universities, but that didn't happen before. So do you think it's worth to fall into this pressure, and how do you think this pressure affects the quality of the work that you publish?
I'll answer very quick, and then I'll let others give their opinion on this. But I think there's definitely a publish or perish culture in academia, right? You have to publish or you'll perish. That being said, I don't think it's a good thing. If you ask me, if I could get rid of it tomorrow, I would get rid of it. But it is necessary to some degree to have publishing and be able to think that. Now, the same thing I'd mentioned before, what I would really, really strongly sort of suggest against would be to not just put on something out for the sake of putting something out. Like, you should feel very comfortable. You yourself should be the most avid advocate of your own work. So if you yourself don't feel comfortable, you shouldn't publish or submit something just because someone else pushes you to do it. I think that's a bad incentive. You're not going to feel comfortable. I have it with people have done this to me, and I don't feel comfortable when I do it. I don't think it's a good incentive, and that leads to bad papers that yourself later have to defend, and that's not a good thing. That being said, there is definitely a need to publish, especially if you're in a PhD, or you want to do a PhD these days. Most people that want to do a PhD already have a couple of papers under the belt. There is this need to do it. That doesn't mean that you have to publish bad things, though. That means that you just have to maybe take longer, and that's okay. It's good to aim for a conference, but it's also really nice and really good to know when to not pull the trigger and wait for the next one. It's okay to just take it a bit slower and then work more on your ideas, work more on things, and then submit. Now, do that with a bit of a limit. You don't want to push it too long, because if you push too long, things get outdated, and that's very complicated to address later on. But it's good to take a bit of patience when you do these things. And I think that's something that is hard to learn at first, because everyone wants to just publish very quick, and you see your peers doing it and you're getting a bit stressed about it. But it's absolutely okay. And I would highly, highly recommend doing this in favor of more quality than quantity.
Maybe Victoria or Murilo, do you want to add something to it, or do you agree? Okay, I think you both agree. So, okay, going to the next question that we have prepared. So, do you think this speed also affects the possibility to collaborate with other fields that probably don't move as fast? For example, Murilo, you work with bioacoustics and this stuff. So, you think that this speed like limits how AI could collaborate with ecology or biology, or how do you think this, collaboration process with other research fields works with this accelerated speed that AI has?
No, I think it just helps in a way for especially other scientists that, for example, they come from like a botanist domain, or they are experts in ornithology, like studying birds, or they're experts in their own little domain. Doing this kind of intersection of AI with their field has shown just a really good synergy between the two. I think the biggest example that I can think of is like AlphaFold doing the all the protein folding stuff, which is basically using AI with chemistry. I mean, it won the Nobel Prize. But I think it just really helps. It's just a tool. It's a tool to solve problems, and I think that every field going forward is gonna use AI in some way, at least in technology and STEM. Like any STEM field is probably gonna use AI in some way to augment the things that they're already doing. So I just see a really good synergy. But it's also going back to what Mateo said. Yeah, there's definitely the publisher perish thing. It's definitely a thing where it can, I guess, add a lot of noise for doing research just for the sake of publishing instead of the sake of doing something that you find interesting and then publishing when you think it's ready and well thought out and proved that it actually works. Um, so yeah, I can see both ways, but I think at least in the biodiversity and ecology domain, it has been really, really helpful. Like seeing just research being done in, for example, coral reef conservation and using AI to do 3D mapping of those corals and then partnering with other scientists like in biologists and things like that. And there's a lot of synergy becoming or growing in that space. So I think it's really exciting. Yep.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And do you feel the same, Victoria, like related to law and social science with AI?
In law, we don't feel the pressure to publish. So I think that there are a lot of barriers for collaboration, but I don't think that speed is one of the most important one. Like I can think about problems of communication, different rule of the games in the different field. Like it's not only a different differences in concepts or in the object of study, it's also different rules of the game because in law we don't have a NeurIPS conference, so prestigious and important. So also prejuicios and biases come into play. Because I don't know, I hear people that think that lawyers try to make advantage and computer science are boring and things like that you hear all the time, and these can be barriers to collaboration.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it depends on the field. But talking about that, sometimes it is said that academia usually stays a little bit behind the industry and that industry usually go faster, basically because of money and resources that allocates into the research. But I feel that for AI is not the case. So do you think this is an example where industry and academia can work closely? And how do you feel that, for example, in law, could be improving these methods with these new tools?
I'm not sure what to answer. Like, I agree that there is a gap because of the difference of resources. Like, I think that the quality of work is correlated with the amount of resources available, and academia is still far from matching the resources that industry can provide. But I think in the case of law is worse because at least I can talk about Argentina, but the research ecosystem for lawyers in Argentina, and it practically doesn't exist. So conducting research is a hobby in law because I don't know, for example, you don't have a rigorous system of peer review. Like you can publish your work if you have a contact in the editorial, and that's all. So as I said before, they have a different rule of the game. So I don't know if it answers your question.
No, I definitely agree. And that being said, I would like to ask you, Murillo, because you also work as a machine learning engineer. So you probably have seen that in papers, like things works good because they are not as big as in industry, for example. So how do you feel that, these rules, as Victoria said, plays different in applied research strictly and applied research that will work in a company that has to be in an MLOps environment and so on?
Right. So there's a few reasons why I think doing research just for the sake of doing research is really good. It just gives you more freedom to explore those ideas without being tied to like a business problem. And I think that's a great thing because then you can find all sorts of interesting things that may happen that you wouldn't have found otherwise. Regarding the ways how things are moving forward, I think with the industry overall, we see those like really big labs like Google DeepMind and then Meta Fair developing really high, like state-of-the-art models or state-of-the-art techniques, and they clearly have like a business impact on whatever they're doing. Especially now, even Google DeepMind has a new type of role, which is like a forward deployed role, which is basically using the most cutting edge stuff that they're doing for the research, but then tied to like a business problem that they're trying to solve or just trying to bring more money to the company and make the lab and the company like profitable in that way. So I can see both things from personal experience. Yeah, like when you attend conferences like CVPR or any other like really major conference, you see like those models or the new methods being done, and it's just improving a tiny little bit from a previous thing, or the changes are very minor. It's not like proposing a completely new architecture or any kind of like truly groundbreaking work that sometimes it doesn't cascade down into the industry or the business problems that you're trying to do. Oftentimes in just industry, you're trying to do things that are more explainable. And yeah, you just have to explain to like stakeholders what the model is doing and why it's behaving that way. So yeah, research sometimes it can obfuscate that and not be like as clear to how they got those results, or even sometimes it's even hard to replicate them because you don't have the compute capacity for training those really large models or whatever reason, right? They didn't post the entire code base public, or they didn't post how they gather the data or anything like that. So I see pros and cons of doing that, or like the synergy also between the industry and the research. But there's definitely a case being made that you definitely don't need the most cutting edge, like state-of-the-art research that is not going to be reproducible in order to actually do something applicable and valuable.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also that specifically, I think that falls into Latin America
Hmm.
because resources might be limited even for companies here. So having a base model is better than have not model at all. And looking for the more advanced models probably won't fix the whole business process. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think that we're running out of time, so I would like to have some takeaways and also leave some times for people to ask questions. So the first thing that, yeah, to close a bit the conversation is, what key steps you think people should get involved when trying to get into research? I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier in the conversation, but what would be your best advice for getting a paper or a base project that they would play around with research, aside from the Kaggle competitions and stuff, but maybe some practical other skills that you think are worth in when people are studying.
I can get started this. I think first and foremost, so once you do similar things what we discussed before, like you identify an area of interest and maybe a specific subfield of that area, I think super useful, super helpful, very insightful thing to do is to pick up a paper you liked and try to implement it, try to recreate it. Because this will show you a lot of pain points that reading the paper will not. So like and those pain points are the things that you can there see how you can extend this and address this, and this will lead to a lot of other ideas that you didn't have when you read the paper. So there's a lot of things that come from actually getting your hands dirty and doing some of the work. And this literally could be as simple as re-implementing something from scratch that they did and then try to understand exactly how it works and how you can apply it and so on. Now, you have to be selective of how you do this because there's a lot of things that are just simply not worth doing it. So it's important that you read a few ideas first and then try to pick up the one that you think is potentially much more useful to look. That sort of legal filter that you're going to have gets better with time. But first, you just have to try a few things. And that will be the first thing. So get your hands dirty, try an actual project. Re-implementing things from scratch can be quite easy, even if you don't have the resources, because you can always downscale things to very small sizes that you can run in. So some free GPUs online, like Colab, like Google Colab, or you can even run it in your own computers. So you can always do this in a very small scale. And the second thing I would do is I really can emphasize the importance of having some sort of mentor. That is crucial. Is always very good, even if that mentor's purpose is only to be a bouncing wall, like just someone that you can just talk to, even if they give very little feedback. It's a really good thing to have someone to talk to because it gives you a lot of pressure to organize your own ideas, to sort of have a clear thought of how would you explain this to someone else. And that will show up like what is the thing that you're actually trying to tackle, how you're going to tackle it, and then what the actual method you're trying to develop. And more importantly, most people, and I can speak for myself and pretty much most of my peers, I think, we don't have the time to write all the papers that we wish we have the time to do it, but we definitely have the time to guide someone to do it. So we can spend 1 or 2 hours a week with someone that is working on a project that maybe we propose, maybe they propose, maybe it's a combination of the two of us, and we will be super happy to do it. Like I've done it. I met people, for example, in a previous LXAI workshop with whom we worked the last year, and we got another paper. We got a paper out in ICML. Like it was literally a conversation that we had in ICML, and we took it to a paper. So that can happen, and I would say most people are very happy to help with this, and if they can, they will just tell you I don't have time, which is absolutely okay. Obviously, it's better to aim for the lower parts of the hierarchy, like myself, like the PhD students, because those are always have much more time than professors, and they will also they have a higher incentive. It's a win-win. If you get a paper, they get a paper too, so it's a win-win. And they're also more likely to reply. That being said, some professors will be also quite open to this, but that's much more rare because they get so many emails. But yeah, it's a good thing. And I would say as a PhD student and anyone that works in it doesn't have to be a PhD student, it could be anyone in industry. If someone reads your paper and is interested and has some ideas and shoot me an email, I'm pretty sure I almost always reply. I at least always send a reply back, say like, oh yeah, let's chat or something. Something comes out of it, cool. If not, that's it. But it's good to have that communication. So I would say those two things. Get your hands dirty and actually talk to people, have some sort of mentorship relationship with someone that is working on something that you're interested in, that can guide you through that first paper. And eventually you'll do the same with others. You just sort of help the other guy later on.
Perfect. I totally agree. And I think this is related to what Murilo said about, doing a Kaggle competition. You can create community and discuss the results with other peers. So that's great. And the last questions that I had before jumping into the questions from the people that attended today is there something that you wish you considered before getting into your PhD, or what advice would you give for someone that's in industry and would like to transition to academia, or that is a student basically and that would like to continue the academia path? I know that you mentioned some advices during the conversation, but if you would like to highlight something in particular, that would be great.
Well, I'm not doing a PhD, but I actually have a good advice. There's this quote by I believe he was a French philosopher, Michel de Montaigne. Like he lived in the 1600s or the 1500s, and he says, "No wind favors he who has no destined port," which basically means like it's good to have an idea of what you want to do and where you want to go. So when serendipitous winds come and show up, you can capitalize on them and reach that goal. You don't have to have like a super clear path, but kind of knowing what you want to do, I think is definitely helpful because otherwise you're just like lost in the ocean and you just don't have any north star to follow. So having that idea is really good. And how you have that idea goes back to something that Mateo said, you got to get your hands dirty and try a bunch of different things. There is really no clear path. It's just like try and see what you like and what you don't like. I think that's like the biggest advice that I can give.
I really like that. Yeah, amazing. I think that having the North is, yeah, super important. Okay, so Victoria, would you like to add something to either of both questions before closing up?
Only a small thing is that what I would like to know before starting my PhD is that, in my opinion, a PhD gives you a lot of freedom to conduct research and do what you want, but at the same time, this implies a lot of responsibility. For example, when I started my PhD, my supervisor told me that I can go to any university in the world I would like to work. I would like to go, only obtaining a acceptation letter from a professor. So for me, when I arrived to Italy, it was like a surprise, and a very impactful surprise. And I have to start planning the next 3 years. But don't be afraid of that. You have to manage a lot of things at the same time: conference papers, your thesis, funding, organizing travels. But at the beginning, it can be very frustrating and difficult, but then you get used to that, and it's fun at the same time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for all your advices. It was great to have you here. So maybe I would like to ask the audience if you guys would like to open your mics and give some questions, or maybe write it down in the chat if you have a specific questions for Mateo, Victoria, or Murilo. Okay, I guess you guys are being a little bit shy, but okay, so I think that this was a great conversation. I really want to thank you for taking the time not only to participate but for giving us all your insights. And yeah, I hope that. Oh, okay, no, we do have a question. So here said, I'm a former digital health founder. I'm looking to break into AI. Any advice that you would like to give, Derek?
I'd have more questions to ask than straight up just like giving advice. Like why are you interested in breaking into AI in the first place? I think that would be like depending on your answer would be the advice that I would give. But I guess the most broad general advice that I can give is like finding like-minded people that can keep you accountable for doing that. Yeah, just I think there's a really strong sense of community that you can build and you can capitalize on that for doing that. I think AI would be super transformative too for health, but the healthcare space is pretty slow to adopt new technology. Yeah, that's very true. Um, if you don't
Sorry.
have any type of like formal education and you want to learn things like in a foundational, more deep way, I'll look for even programs that you can enroll and keep yourself accountable for doing that. If you like structured learning, there's also like project-based learning where you can just start learning things on your own and doing projects. I think that's a really good way of doing that. But I guess going through like a classroom with people with you and having that kind of like schedule that you have deadlines and things like that would be super helpful. Um, yeah, just like basically how you learn anything. at that point. But
yeah, I would also add that there are, as Murilo said, some research group focused on health and healthcare. So, for example, there are conferences as MICAI that there are from medical images or stuff like that. That probably you will be really comfortable, reading this field site and research. So maybe you can start with those general ideas on what the models do for health, and then following the advice that they said is getting your hands dirty on probably a model. But of course you can take like some beginner courses on AI just to for you to have a sense on what's the input data, what's the training, what's the testing size, whatever, these concepts that would be really useful for you to understand, if that helps.
Yeah, I would just add one last thing. There's also a big machine learning for health symposium. It used to be a workshop at New Herbs and other conferences. Now it's its own standalone one, which I would recommend looking into it. It's pretty much run by medics, run by doctors, run by people that are in the medicine space. So it's not me that does nothing about medicine trying to say I do machine learning for medicine. So it will be actually quite useful if you're interested in the area.
Okay, we have another question saying, do you have any friendly beginners AI journals to study? Or what resources do you think are AI friendly for beginners in research?
so the main conference that we participate, I think it's very beginner friendly and like quite easy, I'd say, to get into and try to publish. They really welcome people that try to publish at the conference. It's called Conference and Labs of the Evaluation Forum. I'll post in the chat here so you have it. It's spelled like CLAF, but I think it's pronounced as clay because it's French. It's like a European conference. And in the conference, there is 14 different labs, and each lab has their own like flavor for the task that they're trying to do. So you have Live Clay, which is about biodiversity research. You have Image Clay, which is about actually like there's a bunch of healthcare tasks there. And then you have other types of labs, and each one of them has their own little flavor. So it can be NLP, it can be multimodal, it can be straight up computer vision. But it's and then they also provide, depending on the lab, they also provide those competitions that run from like January through May. So you can participate in the competition with everybody. You learn about a bunch of the techniques and methodologies that they're doing to solve that particular task. And then at the end, you have the opportunity to publish a working note paper and then go through the peer review process and then get published at the conference. So I'll drop the name and the link in the chat if anybody is interested. But I think it's a really good beginner-friendly conference to participate. It's not as prestigious as like CVPR and the RIPS, but it's still like you're still doing research and doing the peer review process. And yeah, it's a good way to get involved.
Yeah, for that one, just add a couple to make 2 cents here. Another one that is very nice and is specifically designed for beginners and for people breaking into the research field is ICLR. So it's the International Conference on Learning Presentations. It has a track which are called tiny papers, which are 2-page papers done for sort of people that are breaking into this space. So it's very short papers. Doesn't have to be extremely null, but it could be very incremental things that are peer reviewed, that are actual publications that are actually being published, and they, more importantly, have funding to attend the conference for some of those papers that get in. So you can actually even attend a fully funded conference. It's a good way to break into it. It's a really nice conference. It's a very prestigious conference. So that's a good way in terms if you already know what you're working on. If you want to know more of the foundations of things, then there's others. The answer will be very different. Then there's things like Coursera's machine learning specialization, which is good for getting some hands-on on the concepts of behind AI, as well as there's a book called the Deep Learning Book, which is traditional sort of classic textbook if you want to get a bit more hands-on, a more theoretical side of things. Both good ways of familiarizing yourself with the field. I'll put the link to the tiny papers in case anyone is interested in that.
And I think that also it helps, as Victoria mentioned, maybe go back to the blog post. Some people like have their like more, light way to share their work. So probably Medium and these platforms are really useful.
Yeah, Substack. Also for AI safety, there is a very well-known site which is effective altruism. No, yeah, effective altruism can be an option, and the other one is Alignment Forum. For example, we share our preliminary work in these kind of sites.
Perfect. I think we have one last question from Eric to Murilo. Probably this question will go back to another conversation after, but he's asking who who conducted research on plant classification, what challenges he encountered in constructing his data set and reliable on open data.
So yeah, just to make it short for the sake of the meeting, I didn't create the data set. The data set was created by the organizers of the competition, and they made the data available to the public. So anybody can use that same data set and try to solve that problem. So they're actually botanists, most of them, and they kind of created this 1.4 million image data set as training data and about 2,200 images on the test data. And they labeled all of the images on the test data, and they made available, there's also labels on the training data, but they made those available, publicly available for anybody that wants to participate. So all the credit goes to them. And that's why I said those types of competitions are really nice, because those things you don't need to even, think about how to go by doing so. Like you have a very structured way, like you already have the data and the task they're trying to solve and optimize for. So the only thing you need to care about is the methodology.
Perfect. Okay, so now again, thank you so much for joining us, to our attendees, but specifically to Murilo, Mateo, and Victoria. I know that taking at the time could be complicated, but thank you so much. It was super inspiring and insightful. So thank you, and we hope to see you soon at the workshop. Just a quick announcement, we are having an open call for papers for NeurIPS with the Latinx in AI workshop. So if you are, you have been playing around with some data set, or you are playing around with a project that you have, we have the open call ready. So if you would like to submit something and meet us there in the conference of NeurIPS, that would be great. And yeah, thank you all for attending, and hope to see you soon in another event.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.